So I invited a buddy of mine, AJ Patton, CEO of 548 Enterprise, to the show. AJ, welcome.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing it. So I met AJ a few years ago. We were both trying to not be fat dads at the gym.
True story.
I got a lot of respect for the guys in there every day like you. Asked me for a spot. I gave him an attaboy for putting some real weight up, and then we were bullshitting for a minute, and he said, you know, I'm working towards 315 for 5. Was that it? I think
Something like,
yeah.
Yep,
Okay,
something like that. Yep.
Close enough. And that stuck with me because, you know, a lot of people are in there, myself included, some days just kind of going through the motions, and the fact that you were in there with a very specific goal. I think now that I know what you do for a living, I didn't know at the time, but now I do. I think that was very on brand.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a cool way to meet you, a cool way to get to know you.
Well, I have to say, one, thanks for having me. You have a lot more clothes on than you usually do, so it's good to see you fully dressed.
Come on.
He's a shorts guy, everyone, just so you know.
Oh, God. Yeah, we'll cut that. Just kidding. So 548 Enterprise is a holding company comprised of 548 Development, 548 Capital, 548 Energy, and 548 Foundation. So reading that makes me already feel like an underachiever, but AJ's a modest guy. I'm going to rattle off a few of his accomplishments. He's Crane's Chicago 40 Under 40, Midwest Energy 40 Under 40, American Council of Renewable Energy Accelerate member, Chicago Business Leadership Council Banking and Finance co-chair, World Leaders Forum board member, Lowe's Community Partner, Chicago Invests Southwest winner, Chicago Community Trust Grant recipient. Dude, where are you putting all the hardware? I know Anna's not letting you put it all on the mantle.
This is true. He knows my wife. He's one of the few people I know my wife, because we both are in the industry, but very few people kind of get the connectivity between the two of us. You know, I'm so much like my grandfather. We were joking about this. I have no idea where the awards are. No idea. And so Anna has some of them in a basket in the attic. I think somebody in my office has like 2 or 3 of them. And then I gave most of them, honestly, not to be too corny, most of them I gave to my parents.
That's cool. That's cool.
You know, I gave them to parents.
Shout out Anna Barsky, by the way.
Yes. Shout out to the
local
boss.
authority on 1031 exchanges.
Just my local authority.
No, she was in. We connected the dots because she came into Intera Realty's office to do a workshop. And I don't even know how we connected things, but you know, she's the go-to person for exchanges in Chicago. So
she's a star.
We worked together for years. I've known her.
Very grateful.
We are starting with rapid fire questions. Give me only answers, no explanations. All right.
Yep.
What'd you listen to on the way here?
Raging Moderate podcast.
Yeah.
It's called Raging Moderate.
I'm writing it down.
It's Scott Galloway, and he's with a woman from Fox News, and they are raging moderates. And I'm trying to diversify the content that I listen to. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and so the podcast I listened to today was called Raging Moderates.
I like it. Favorite Chicago coffee shop?
Sip and Savor, Hyde Park, 53rd Street. Probably.
Yeah, I like it. Pizza place?
Depends on my mood. I live a block away from Pequod's.
Yeah, that's not wrong. Early bird or night owl? I might know the answer.
Early bird by a lot.
Yeah.
I'm an old man. I go to bed at 9:30.
I see you in there in the gym. I see. I didn't have to ask that one to you. Best under the radar Chicago restaurant?
Ja Grill on 53rd.
I know Ja Grill.
Ja Grill used to be in Lincoln Park.
Yeah.
It's now out south. When I host people that are first time in Chicago, I don't care what status they think they are. I take them to Ja Grill, and they think Chicago's the best restaurant.
Oh, dude, the food's awesome.
Yeah, Ja Grill.
What's one word your colleagues would use to describe you?
Intentional.
I like that. Not surprising based on the intro that I gave. Favorite intersection in the city?
Well, I have this dream. You said questions, answers, no explanation.
No, go ahead.
Peterson, you know the Whole Foods on Peterson, on the north side, Peterson
I
and
that coming, yeah. Okay, I do. Peterson, like Cicero up there?
Yes. That's got the Whole Foods with the 50 units on top of it.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with building that one day. I want to do that.
Okay.
I love that. I just love it. And
You
I
love
that.
the connectivity between the retail and the apartments?
I love
like,
that
what
concept
about it?
of apartments and grocery together. That needs to be a thing. I would love to do something.
There are a lot of neighborhoods in Chicago that could benefit from that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I random, but every time I drive past, I love it.
I think a lot of people, you know, in my business, I sell a lot of mixed use buildings, and I think a lot of people sleep on what a commercial component can do to the resi component of it. So
Absolutely.
like, you know, there's some developments that seem very intentional, and it's like the commercial can add like some cachet to the building. Like I live over Whole Foods is a great example. And then there's some where, you know, like, no offense to somebody, like, you know, there's a smoke shop because it's like the first tenant that came in and offered them a deal that they would accept, or something that just doesn't mix with the, like, doesn't really like blend well with the apartment component. But I think mixed use real estate is like the fabric of an urban neighborhood.
Love it.
And so that's, here we are, like, two real estate guys rambling about
I'm in.
questions.
I'm in.
But all right.
I'm in.
Last one. Plug an up and coming Chicago real estate person that you feel like deserves some recognition. Somebody you see hustling.
I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, we'll probably talk about this, but I try to meet with everybody.
Yeah.
So, I really like Bonita a lot. I love what she's doing. She's a star now, though. She's not really up and coming, but I just love what she's doing on the luxury side.
Yeah.
Luxury single family.
What's her last name?
Harris.
Cool.
She's a star. Man, who's up and coming? Because now I wonder who. I don't want to be offensive because up and coming is a thing.
No, I mean, like,
I will say this. Like, for example, like
somebody give a shout out to
Phil Beckham.
Okay.
If you follow the Green Line, 43rd Street and Green Line,
down Phil Beckham.
There's a project there called 43 and Green.
Yep.
And he's got 3 phases where he's doing mixed use, 10-story with essentially no parking, right there at a train stop. In New York, that's called every day. In Chicago, that's rare.
Yeah.
And he's done it on 43rd Street, which I think is even more impactful. And so now he's on phase 3 and about to do a hotel over there. And that was like his first real estate development. He's the next big thing.
It's also like transformative for the neighborhood. You know, you see a development like that, maybe even especially one that goes in phases, and I feel like it proves the, you know, call it a need or a want for that type of housing and that type of retail or that type of hospitality in the neighborhood, like kind of gradually, you know, because I'm sure that there are people who are skeptical about it at inception, and then when they see it executed, they're like, man, it turned out cool.
Well, and I would argue, no, spot on. And I would argue our other client, our invisible client, but that's always our client, is the bank. And so when that project has success, you show them, hey, we built this. The moment we even started to close, to get all 4 walls enclosed, there was a wait list to get in the door. And I think that sends a great message to the bank about going into markets that they had not previously gone to take those opportunities serious. And so I think that was part of what I think is so great about what he done. No one had put a crane south of Roosevelt in some time. That's a hell of a thing he's accomplished.
Yeah. And to do it in a transit-oriented way is cool, too.
I think it's genius.
Phil Beckham, Bonita Harris. All right. So those weren't so rapid, but I loved your answers.
Yeah, long-winded, my bad.
I plan on starting most podcasts by asking the guests about growing up. And when I was preparing for this, I learned something about you that I didn't know, and I want to kind of lead your answer with a quote that I read from your website. In 1999, my mother got a $400 gas bill, and we had a hole in the roof we couldn't afford to fix because my mother made $10 an hour. So our gas got shut off, and I had to boil water to take a bath for over a year. That sticks with you. It becomes part of who you are. That's why it's my mission to lower family utility bills and clean energy technology with energy technology, excuse me. It's an incredibly powerful experience and mission. Tell me a little bit about growing up, and lead us to, maybe pause to, how you got into the real estate business.
Yeah, thank you. So, that experience is frankly what kind of seeded the company. And so having that lived experience, I knew I didn't want anyone else to have it. And I was lucky enough during that time, I was playing varsity sports, so I was getting a chance to shower at the school at least, which kind of helped subsidize some of that time. But, that was my realities when I walked in the door at home. And so when I started, I was, I had a great family, mother, grandparents were awesome. We talked about my grandparents off camera, but I had a great mom, great set of grandparents. Regardless of our income level, I was wealthy in love and encouragement, which you realize in life now that you and I are both parents. Yeah. You realize that there's some things money cannot buy, and that's time, commitment, encouragement, people giving you those words of encouragement to make sure you stay on the right path. So I was very wealthy from that perspective. We just didn't have no money. We just had no money. So fast forward, when I wanted to start my own firm, I started it as an intern at Duke. And then started as an analyst, or started as an intern at Duke, then went to be in the executive training program at HSBC, then left to go be an analyst at Equities First, which is a Hong Kong-based firm. What I realized my heart was trying to change that lived experience for everyone else so that no one else had to have utility bills impact their quality of life. And so when I started 548, I named the companies 548 because that's the unit number in the projects that I grew up in. So I branded all the companies so that regardless how great things can be, we're anchored in that experience and that we're always serving people those opportunities and lived experiences.
It's awesome, man. I mean, so take a step back though. How did you grew up in affordable housing and you were, and then you made it to Indiana. Was that athletics or was it academics, or like you made it to Indiana State and then you started your professional career with two, in the real estate world, kind of household name, large companies. So there weren't, I'm making an assumption, but I think it's a safe one. Like there weren't a lot of people that were growing up where how you did, earning those opportunities. And how'd you do it? In addition to having the love and support of your family, which
it was a little odd. I will tell you, because I will say I was blessed. There's a national program called Inroads that helps African Americans get internships with Fortune 500s. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky enough to get in that program. That helped me land Duke. I got into Indiana State. It's funny. In my mind, I was an athlete. Unfortunately, there weren't any coaches looking for 5'8" slow guys. So I kept checking the mail. Bob Knight wasn't calling. We went to Indiana State. They offered me a full ride for academics and all that, and so that's why that made sense.
Cool.
It was the hometown school. I'm from small town Indiana. It made sense, and so that's why we went that path. And then the Inroads program helped me get him to Duke, and I parlayed that in the HSBC. And then it was just then things got weird. Market got weird. Yeah, how that happens.
Yeah. Were you entrepreneurial as a kid?
Oh yeah, I was the king of the.
I knew that answer before.
I was. Necessity build. Kind of builds these things. I would carry my lawnmower everywhere, and I was lucky enough that 2 doors down was the greenskeeper for the local golf course. So he had a garage that would sharpen your lawnmower, and he loved my work ethic. So he would do it for free all the time. Just come on, little fella, and he'd tighten up my lawnmower, and he'd see me dragging it down the street, and I'm cutting everybody $10, man. I'll make you laugh.
That was like my growing up job. I miss mowing the yard too. I mean, I don't even have any grass in my house.
I don't either.
Yeah, same. But like, you remember when you're a kid, you go out, you see the shaggy yard, you mow it for an hour or whatever it takes. You see the lines, it smells a certain way. It's a very tangible work product, and you get paid right away, and then you're like, all right, I did my work for the day. Now, I miss that instant gratification and that, like, that tangibility.
Now, what do you have? Now, this is interesting because as he mentioned, we do kind of know each other. What do you have in your life that replaces that?
I think it's my experience with my kids is the first thing I think of is like, doing things with your hand, building things. I think that's the first thing that gets close to replace. It's not the same. It's better in some ways, and it's not the same in others. But I think teaching them a task and seeing them do it is kind of like the next version of it. My wife recently instilled a reward system in our house where we have Monopoly money that we give them for doing particular types of chores if they do them proactively. And it's been really cool to see my oldest son in particular, who's just about to turn 8, want to earn money. But it also you see him do these little things around the house, and I don't know, it just kind of reminds you when you were a kid. Even though he's not earning money the way that I was, I like to see that he's got the ambition to kind of earn it.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
This is going to sound funny. We think similarly in the sense that because our industries move slow and you have to be obnoxiously patient.
Yeah.
That I don't have a thing that's A plus B equals C, and I see it within a couple hours. So now my thing is I still clean the house.
Yeah.
I do laundry, I do dishes, I pick up after my kids, and they think everyone's like, you still. I'm like, I need something in my life that I touch and it moves. Everything else is Anna, I'll see you in 6 months.
Anna, don't take him for granted.
They won't clip this part.
I brought up our kids, or it came up, whatever. And one thing that I think about myself, but I think maybe you even have a more, maybe it's a little bit more of a stark difference, is how do you make sure that you instill the work ethic that you have in your kids who are growing up a little bit more comfortably about some things? And I'm not trying to make a comment about you had a wonderful upbringing in some ways, but you talked about some of the hardship that you guys had from a financial standpoint. So how do you make sure that your kids, or how do you want to make sure that your kids have that hustle that you have?
Yeah, it's complex. We live in Lincoln Park. My kids have a nanny. So
I know this, but
so it's different. I think part of this is
Daddy runs 4 businesses.
Yeah, they're what's this about again?
Yeah.
I think part of it is my son and my kids are much younger. My son just turned 5. My daughter's 1. I try to take to me, it's about gratitude and then just understanding everyone's place on the planet. I've done the thing that has really built kind of the brand and what we've done is that I treat everybody the same. And mostly because I've seen everyone as an equal. We all have a role on the planet. God's using us for different missions. And so what I will try to do, right now my kids are too young, is just understanding that, hey, if you're the future boss, then it's your job to give back. That's why we started the foundation. I take him to different, he goes to every single nonprofit event. He's never missed an event. Even when he was fussy, he goes to every single nonprofit event, even if he doesn't know what the heck's going on. He's in he thinks that it's his nonprofit. He has no idea what nonprofit means. And that's going to be a part of kind of the mission.
He does, though. I mean, he might not know literally, but he's seeing it, right?
Yeah. And my hope is that he understands. I think the nice thing is he has taken to construction. And so in his mind, right? And so I'm like,
because it's cool.
It's cool.
It's cool.
And so he's like, man, I think he thinks the coolest guy in our neighborhood is the guy that picks up trash.
Yeah. And
I'm like, you're right. Because if he doesn't do it, the whole neighborhood runs out of sync. So you've got to appreciate a good day's work.
That's awesome. I mean, we have going back to school, they hold the board. What do you want to do? It's drive a truck, it's pick up the guy, and in a lot of ways, those are cool jobs, really cool jobs, really necessary. And then a truck goes by, they're like, "Can you believe that truck?" I'm like, you take a second, you look at, you're like, that is a really cool truck.
It's
I see what you mean.
And I think one of the lessons out of COVID is we really had to question. We got the answer to the question of what is an essential job.
Yeah, everything.
And so now we know, like, maybe we need to pay a little more respect to the guy bagging groceries.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, so I think that's what I'm trying to instill in my kids. And there's balance. It's going to be delicate. It's going to be a balancing act, and it's ever growing. Yeah.
Good for you, man. I want to go to, and not the smoothest segue. I want to go back to, you were talking about your experience at Duke Realty and Equities First, and you can tell in the way that you're hardwired that you always had this desire to start your own thing. And obviously, we talked a little bit about the mission of doing so, or maybe like the why. But how about the how? Like you're leaving a comfortable job, presume that you were making a good living for your age, and then, you're taking this leap. What about it maybe did you underestimate about starting your own firm? What about it did you think was going to be harder? Maybe you overestimated it? Tell me a little bit about the experience launching your own firm, because I gather that there's going to be other people, hopefully somebody listens to this, but somebody listening to it might be in a position where they have this itch to do their own thing, but taking that leap is a difficult thing to do. Yeah,
it's ironic. I remember going home, and because I knew it was a milestone in my life, I actually went back to Southern Indiana, and I gathered up my grandparents, parents, sisters, nieces, nephews. I put them all together, and I said, I'm quitting my job. And their faces, you thought someone died.
Like, oh no, AJ thinks he's going to be an athlete again. Yeah.
Right. Swear. Excuse me. So it was crazy. And so I remember my dad has we just lost him a year ago, and he had a blind faith in me. Just like, he doesn't understand it. I was the first one in my family to go to college. He didn't understand the college thing, but he trusted that I knew what the heck I was doing. And when I picked Indiana State, I picked Indiana State over Northwestern. I got into West Point, Northwestern, and I picked Indiana State for a very specific reason, and all those things panned out. And so I got everything out of it. And so at every stage, they kind of, even since I was like 14, they just kind of, all right, we trust him now.
He knew you had
And so when I came home and I said, I'm quitting this good job. I was 26, 7, 8. I was making mid six figures at the time. It was probably a successful thing my family's ever seen, and they were looking at it like, maybe this is a fad, what's going on? And I'm like, no, I got this plan. I showed it to my grandpa, and he was like, okay, this could work. I think you got it. And then I hit the streets. I had to do some fundraising. And I think the thing that two things I took for granted. One is, when you're working as a part of an institution, I had success. I was 26 years old. I was 24 as an analyst. By the time I was 26, 27, I was head of U.S. investments.
Dude.
I was knocking it out of the park.
Jeez.
When I left, what I thought, one man's wonder kid is another person's idiot. And the moment I stepped one foot outside that company, it was almost as if no one had even recognized any of the success I had before. And it was the most humbling thing. And so, no one had acknowledged, no one cared to think of that as my track record. And so now that was humbling. Two, I think the other thing is, you don't realize when you go to, I don't know if you've ever done a fundraise before, raising capital is the hardest thing to do in America. And it took me 2 years to raise $1 million. I was working for someone else's company and had $500 million. All I had to do was send an instant message, and they just wire me $1 million. Like, I didn't care.
In addition, layer on the complexity of raising money in Chicago too, and like you said, with experience that didn't necessarily translate into a track record, right? So how'd you do it?
Yeah, I mean, the honest answer is, it took me 2 years. I went entirely broke, and this is I don't go public with this story very often, but I'll give my gym buddy the exclusive. I was so broke that I was driving Uber from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. and from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. And running my company in the middle of the day. And then I did that for about almost a year straight. so I had a sign in my car that said, I have a solar startup, ask me questions. And I had a stack of business cards in my armrest, and I had my pitch deck saved on my phone so I could quick zap it to you whenever you're ready.
Dude.
A guy gets in my car, and he's like, and I met everybody that way. I met all the executives of all the major banks that way. And a guy gets in my car, and he's like, you really got a business? I said, yeah. I said, this is real. I got a real track record. I'm not just an Uber driver. I'm like a guy.
Yeah.
And we did 3 coffees, and 40 days later, he wired me $1 million.
Really?
Yeah.
Was his background in the energy space?
No, he was leaving. He was a financial advisor, leaving a big shop to start his own platform, and I was going to be the fund manager for all the real assets, and so he gave me the money and let me cook.
Unbelievable. I mean, if you ever need a reminder for like continuing to like shoot your shot, you know, I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So you have 548 Enterprise,
Yep.
which is obviously there's 4 different kind of related but different verticals in a way too. So energy came first. Is that
capital? So
capital
the
came
money
first.
everything starts with capital. So we raised the first couple $1 million in capital, and then that's where the money sets. Development represents our real estate interests, so that's the development arm that executes on behalf of capital in real estate transactions. Then energy. So everything we do has a sustainability component to it. We put rooftop solar on everything. We do it for third parties, the majority of what we do. And so we put solar on top of commercial properties. That energy company does that exclusively. And then lastly is the foundation, which we could talk about separately. But so no, those are all separate P&Ls. Capital's always been first.
Yeah.
You need money to do everything.
So when I was reviewing the website, and you know, when I kind of realized,
my apologies.
No. When I was just getting an understanding, you know, I knew you from a different way. You know, it doesn't matter what you do when you're working out next to somebody. It's not something I ever talk about. But I started to think about, you know, in a big market like Chicago, a lot of people say specialize in a niche, only do that. But you're doing 4 different business lines. Again, they're correlated, but you're doing them all effectively. How do you manage doing these different things while maintaining a specialization and maintaining like your focus as a leader of the business line?
Yeah, I think it's complex, but I think the reality is that they all kind of work together. So the investment stuff is separate because you're going to need your GP interests, or you just need money in general to do everything. Yeah. So the investment stuff's relatively easy. The real estate and the energy, I hired a separate president for that company for energy. It has a separate project manager, a separate business development person. It has its own thing. And so in energy takes advantage of all the success that the development company has.
Yeah.
So it gets to build its track record on the 10 developments we have in the real estate side, and then they go get new contracts with different municipalities and other developers, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Is there anything that you would change about the way that you launched the business, or that you kind of have them integrated now, that if you could rewind a few years, or?
I think they're structured right. I think if, we did a seed round for the energy company, we'll do a Series A end of next year. I think that's a company that will probably IPO at some point.
Yeah.
I definitely believe that. Obviously, we won't IPO an energy company during the current climate. But I think that, I don't think I'd structure it much differently. I think we've scaled at kind of the right pace. I think interest rates coming down is only going to help momentum on both sides.
I think so too. So let's talk about the energy side.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, because I'm going to, in addition to showing my, me being green as a podcast, I'm going to show you how little I know about energy probably in the questions. But tell us about just like a fallacy that you regularly debunk about alternative and solar energy. What's something that, our average real estate person in Chicago of some capacity doesn't know or misunderstands about your business?
Yeah, I think part of it, in fairness, that I think people know people that are well-traveled know that if you go to the East Coast or if you go to the West Coast, solar is just ingrained in their culture, right? And so they see it when you fly into LAX, you fly into Phoenix, you fly into La Jolla or San Diego, every piece of the airport, every industrial complex is covered in solar. You fly into O'Hare or Midway, nothing. And so, and it's not, for no other reason than no one's really focused on it. And so, you know, our state, the state of Illinois, has the most progressive clean energy policy in the country. So it subsidizes solar so much that it's now going to be the leader in clean energy.
So where's the disconnect? Just in that, like, it's like a, not like cultural, but it's just like it's such a regional thing that people get lazy and never.
It's market cycles. So when the clean energy bills pass, the first thing that happens is the big utility scale stuff. That all happens downstate. We'll never see that stuff. That's all big farms, 100-acre farms. They get covered in solar panels, and they'll service then. And then the other piece is the single-family residential market.
Yeah,
that's happening in suburbs. I'm sure you've got those calls before.
Yeah.
Then the last to come is commercial. And then the commercial owners get called and they get engaged.
But some of the commercial buildings are like the most ripe, right? They have just bigger footprints of roof.
I'm building an entire business just around that.
Yeah,
it's just big boxes, big flat roofs. They're perfect
TPO roofs already. You know, so
Perfect.
What makes a? I mean, again, here I am knowing, you know, what makes a property most ripe for it, or what applications are you finding this working? And then, you know, we're talking to real estate people, like talk about the dollars and cents of it too.
Absolutely.
Like,
So this
cost prohibitive to do, as it say?
No, it's the beauty of Illinois, and I say this all the time because we talk to folks nationally. The moment you cross the state border, any direction, it's a different story. Inside of Illinois, you know, if it's a multifamily housing, for the most part, if it's commercial, residential, or industrial retail, we can install it free of charge, and the discounts start at 20% to the local utility. This starts at 20. Now, if it's multifamily and it's affordable, then I can throw in a kicker to get you to 50%. If it's Joe's calling, he's like, "Hey, bro, I own a 50,000 square foot industrial property off of Ogden. It's a new roof. It's 20% discount on utilities."
Jeez. And so you're, in addition to employing it in your developments, and you're doing a lot of affordable development, most if not all, no?
Yes, but a little over half. Yeah. Yep.
And so you're doing it, and then you're doing it third party as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. You had mentioned this earlier, and it's probably the part of what you do that, you know, I know the least about, but I think is the most like the foundation, 548 Foundation. So I saw on your website that Lowe's provided a $500,000 donation, and I saw that it's a massive organization. I think with generally, like, I don't know how Lowe's is, but generally a company like that has so much red tape and so many people involved in decision making that, like, just even getting somebody on the phone that's like a part of that decision making is difficult, let alone navigating it and then winning the donation. How'd you do it? How'd you get in touch with them? How'd you win it?
Total accident. We have a market rate project on 79th Street. We put a couple $1 million into a mixed use property there.
Yeah.
We did a groundbreaking ceremony. It was the first time, you know, multiple millions have been invested in 79th Street in a generation.
That's in Auburn Gresham?
Auburn Gresham.
Yeah.
No tax credits, just a straight market rate investment. And so it attracted some attention. And so different politicians and so forth came to the groundbreaking ceremony. Unbeknownst to me, somebody from Lowe's was in the crowd. You know, I showed off at the groundbreaking. We have a thing where we show off all the local contractors that got jobs because of the investment, just to get community buy-in. And a guy walks up to me, he says, "Hey, I'm from Lowe's. This is really cool. This like sustainable thing you're doing for everyday people. I'm gonna tell my boss." I'm like, I mean, I didn't know him from Joe.
Yeah, but here you are treating everybody equal. You know, yeah.
So I got to thank my mom. And the guy walks away. He sends a letter an email to a person that makes it to the CEO's desk of Lowe's. I get a blind email. They send the entire executive staff from Lowe's to 79th and Loomis, if you know that neighborhood.
Yeah.
No security, no publicist, no cameraman. They show up full suits in the dead of summer. So they're sweating.
Yeah.
And they're walking around and they're just looking and they're like, we can't believe you're really doing this.
Huh.
And I bought the building. There was a drug dealer on 3. There was a sex worker on 2. There was an old lady who was scared to come into the hallways. And obviously we changed all of that. I mean, we just changed the whole narrative on the corner. And so they finished the tour. They looked around, and this is the first project in that community that had, I'm looking for, fresh air ventilation. And because in those neighborhoods, you want fresh air, you got to open a window. So we put fresh air ventilation in the building. It was the first time in the whole community I'd ever seen that. So they were impressed, and they said, "How can we help?" I said, "Well, a lot of ways you can help. You start with a check, whatever." And so,
this shit's not free.
Yeah, right. They left, and then I got a call like a month later, and they said, "We decide we're going to help you with the next 100. So we're sending you 100 of everything: 100 fridges, 100 toilets, 100 shower heads, faucets, light fixtures. We're sending you 100. Send us an address, and we're dropping it off now."
Did you have a project earmarked for the materials at that point?
I had some projects, and some, as you know, developments take so long that even the projects that I had earmarked for were still conceptual, or maybe we had site control and weren't there. Yeah. Also, what a blessing. Let me also say, if this was NASCAR, I'd be wearing a Lowe's jacket. But, a blessing. But if somebody calls you tomorrow and says, "I got 100 fridges for you."
Yeah. I don't know where I'm going to put them. Yeah.
We had to find a place, put 100 toilets, 100 fridges, 8 different light fixtures, 100 of them.
Yeah, you're not putting them in your office on Whacker, huh? Yeah.
So it was an absolute blessing. And then on top of that, when they gave us the 100 of everything, they also gave us a blanket 30% discount every time we walk in the store.
Jeez.
And so as long as
this is a situation. I'm sorry to
No,
interrupt you,
we're good.
But I think it's important to note here that you redeveloped this, a lot of people listening might know Auburn Gresham, but redeveloping a building to that standard in that neighborhood is not commonplace. No. And you did it in such a way, with the solar, with the energy efficiency that benefits the tenants, it benefits the bottom line of the property, but you did it to a standard that you don't see often anywhere, let alone in that neighborhood. Unfortunately, it'd be great to see more. And so you did it the right way before you asked them for anything. And then these other things from Lowe's and the recognition that you got from it, and the politicians, that love to kind of come out when something's done already. Everything happened afterwards. So I just have to point out the lesson in that, because doing something the right way, not taking any shortcuts, not doing it because you were asking Lowe's for $500,000, and then here you are, this is what comes of it.
I didn't ask for anything. Yeah. I just said, I'll take anything.
Yeah, right.
Because if they'd have cut me a check for 10 grand, I'd have been like, great. It's the same thing. And I think it's a part of our investment thesis, because I think some of these projects, they're for me, I think there's kind of 2 ways in real estate that everyone kind of teaches. It's either you're going to invest as little as possible and raise the rents as high as possible. Mm-hmm. And what we've done is said, okay, what if we invest strategically and make the building operate better, so then it lowers our operating expenses, so that lessens our burden to raise the rents? Mm-hmm. Because in many of these communities, there's no capacity to raise those rents, right? And so then if we can be patient capital and be strategic capital, then maybe there's an outcome there. And so we tested that there, and then obviously it was great to get that kind of support on the back end.
Very validating, right?
Yeah.
When you said that, it reminded me of guy that I'm friendly with. He's a residential broker across the street, Alex Morsch. He said, he thinks about real estate, either folks that are good at spending a lot of money or that are good at not spending any money.
Right.
You either find a way to somehow strategically deploy a lot of money to do things that really impress users, banks, investors, whatever, or you find a way to be very frugal and thrifty and be kind of, I I don't want to say lowest cost provider and that it's always a bad thing, but that you find a way to be leaner than others. So
absolutely. And I think that's instinctual. Something about that's instinctual to our industry.
Yeah.
And we understand. I mean, also these are never, none of these deals are easy. Not the crane, all our friends that own this, the big developers that do stuff in the West Loop or Lincoln Park, to the guy that mom and pop that owns a 6-unit. This is not an easy game. No. So I have respect for everybody that's in it.
What's the 548 Foundation? What are you focused on now?
Yeah, so the foundation. What's interesting is what I learned, what's equally as important as lowering people's utility bills is that when you're making these investments is who gets these jobs. And I think it's one of the most under-discussed. All these real estate gurus, everybody's a billionaire all of a sudden. Nobody wants
log into your LinkedIn and just a zillion people
telling
you how to live your life.
Every Instagram guy's a
clue who they are.
Real estate billionaire that's got 9,000 units all of a sudden.
Yeah.
One of the most under-discussed things is who gets the jobs. Who's the beneficiary of your investments? We always talk about the tenants, but who's actually doing the construction? And so you want to change. So me showing up to 79th Street, first time in a generation, somebody like myself pulls up, well, I just created 25 jobs. If in a neighborhood that's got a 24% poverty rate, if I just make sure 3 people get jobs, I've moved the needle a little bit, right? And so I had the alderman in my ear, and I'm starting to realize this. And so I said, I leaned on one of the contractors and I said, well, hold on. If I'm the lead investor and developer, you kind of got to do what I say. And so I said, look, man, why don't you hire some people from the neighborhood? Here's a couple young guys. Let them pick up trash or do something. And he said, well, the problem with your guys is that they don't want to show up on time and they're not certified, they're not safe. Things that are relatively valid if you've been on job sites. Some of these young people are late or lazy. It's true about everybody.
Yeah, some of the old people are too. Yeah.
You said it.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, fair enough. So I started the foundation, a separate 501c3, to do the workforce training in these neighborhoods. And so we did it with a little class of 10, and then at the end, we found jobs for them. And we kept doing, and this story gets crazier. We did it for 10, then we did it for 20, then we did it for 40, and then the governor finds out. And he gives me $30 million to expand the program throughout the region.
Jeez.
And so we've got offices up to Waukegan, down to Joliet and Aurora, throughout the south and west sides. And now we've got like 200 graduates and a 500-person wait list.
So it's all about finding people from the neighborhoods and trying to teach them of the trades, teach them of the opportunity in trades, and then
14 weeks.
Connecting them with the actual opportunity. So it's not abstract. It's not just like, not that this wouldn't be good too, but it's not just that you're learning about a particular trade. You're also saying like, here's the opportunity to go put it into practice. I
have been very clear. I'm a businessman. I don't run a nonprofit, but this is about opportunities. And so every person that comes through the door, if we can't match them with a job opportunity at the end, we'll just close the doors. So if you want to get a contract with me, let me just be clear. For anybody who hears me, you get a contract from me, I will be putting in every contract, which I have, and no one's giving me any issues with this. Hire a couple guys.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's a good thing for both, right? Like
Everybody
if you really, I think that there's so many people in the real estate business that really care, that do want to affect the change in a particular neighborhood for the better, whether it's an affluent neighborhood or an impoverished neighborhood. I think that a lot of people, if given the opportunity and provided it doesn't totally upset the apple cart on like the economics of the deal, would like to do some good along with it.
Absolutely.
So are you finding that you have, is there a balance between the workforce that you've created and like, I know that you have a lot of developments of your own and then you're working with others to kind of assume place these candidates. Like, how's the balance of people versus projects?
We've staffed up on that side. So, there's a lot of people focused on getting those folks jobs and getting them certified and getting them set up. So, relatively, obviously then the only problem I think we have with placing all those folks is where the market cycle is. If there were a couple more cranes in the sky, this wouldn't even be much of an issue. So, so far the program's been overly well received. Everyone's like, They meet our students, meet our graduates. They're overly trained. They're very professional, perfect attendance. Like, they're ready to work. These guys are hungry. And so, and I say guys, our valedictorian of our last class was a woman. Yeah. And so, I mean, yeah, we've got a great group of folks.
Yeah. It's incredible, man. So if you were to say, like, how could you further integrate like the 548 Foundation into the real estate community? Is it as you talked about earlier in our conversation, is it about meeting more people, connecting with other developers, because you can't put all these people into practice. You have a lot going on, but you can't. So what are you trying to do to kind of grow it? Is it more on the workforce side or more on the project side?
Yeah, I think the truth is the downside of founding a company is that it takes your image, right? And so companies tend to reflect
good and bad thing. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And one of the things I am terrible at is self-promotion. Crappy website, crappy social media. I'm a terrible storyteller when it comes to touting our own stuff.
I could argue with you about your self-promotion. You promote yourself in a different, you're carrying yourself to a high. I had no idea what you did before I met you. You promote yourself a different way, right? But I understand, like, you're not the guy to hold a megaphone and say, here's what I do, look at my accomplishments.
Right. And I think the counter, what marketing and PR people that want to get me under marketing contracts would say, AJ, if you told the story more and consistently, then it would open the doors for more partnerships. Other developers would come to you and say, hey, let me create a pathway for your graduates to get on our job sites, whether it's West Loop Towers or something, Lincoln Yards or the stadium or Michael Reese, any of the major developments. There should be partnerships there. And
or even some of the smaller ones in the neighborhood. I think that there's a lot more shovels in the ground right now in some of the small and medium-sized stuff.
100%. And I think
interrupt you.
No. I 100% agree. And I think some of that's just telling a story and doing a better job of being consistent in marketing it. But I have just been so bad at it because I've always taken an approach that if you just do the work, people will figure it out. Good work speaks for itself. And we do live in a world where people need likes, subscribers, followers, retweets. And I'm kind of live in this other world of like, let me just keep working.
Dude, it's I agree. And truthfully, it's part of the reason why I'm doing this. Because in my business, and a lot of our businesses, there's a level of self-promotion that's required. And I think that it's hard to, as a broker, it's hard to balance, here's something I'm selling or here's something we just sold. And, I want to also deliver some content of value, hopefully, that is a way to stay in touch with my audience and grow my audience without it being like I'm always asking for something. So that's part of what the initiative here is just like finding other ways to self-promote without feeling like a douchebag.
It doesn't have
about myself.
No, I don't think. And let me clarify. It doesn't. And this is the lesson that I had to learn over the last several months. It doesn't have to be an or. It can be an and.
Yeah.
And I'm always thinking about. There's so many people that are so good at promoting. They get themselves in these situations, and you meet them, and you try to do a transaction with them, and they're so underwhelming.
Yeah.
And then there's other folks like yourself who's done great work for a long time and has flown under the radar. You're a star for those that know. And then there's this other world that could be had if we started to tell the story more, right?
Yeah.
And so it's probably an and. You can keep doing great work and start telling the story more and more and more.
Yeah.
And then we can do best of both worlds. I mean, I always go back to me buying my house recently, and it was this mega star realtor. And I'm like, Anna and I, who are both in real estate, we're tough people to please. And we both looked at each other and said, this ain't it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it feels like there's a hard, I'm going to share it kind of an inverse experience. And I don't know if it's, the same person or not. We bought and sold our last place through Jeff Lowe, and he's at Compass. He's a, really well-recognized broker. And we were very, I'm in the real estate business, I'm a broker, and I think it made me kind of appreciate the level of service. He's very good at something that I've tried to employ in my business is he is very good at being involved without micromanaging, without doing stuff that, he was kind of like leaning on his team to do things that he didn't have to do, but like when there were still business points to discuss, was involved.
Yeah.
So I think that, he does a good job of, I think, marrying the two, where he's promoting himself, but he's also a doer. He's actually somebody that's like getting a lot done, and he's not all talk. And I agree that if you can walk that line, if you can do both, it can certainly be, it can help you develop your business. It creates I think a compounding effect kind of for your business if you have the ability to execute, but you're not shy about it either.
Yeah. I thought you said you were a rookie. That was a pro move on spinning that to something positive.
Look at this. I even put the iPad down so people didn't know I was reading it. All right, man, we're going to finish with a few questions I'm going to ask all the guests. Not rapid fire, so Go ahead and explain yourself, even though we didn't apply the rapid fire to the earlier questions anyhow. As CEO of a portfolio of companies in Chicago, what's a typical day look like? And what would you like to do? Hang on, sorry. What's something you'd like to do more of, and what's something you'd like to do less of in your daily work life?
Okay. More of and less of. Typical day for me, gym 6, shower, take my, one of the things I'm really passionate about is I always take my son to school.
Same, dude.
And I work 70, 80 hours every week. I don't get to spend it. I mean, he's young, but I take that very personal. And so I take him to school every day. That's just important for me. So I take my son to school, then usually I'm on calls all morning. I definitely wish I did more one-on-ones, and because I want to do a better job of building up like better layers of management and leadership. And so now that I've found out who some of my star players are, I'm going to invest more time in them individually one-on-one, getting them the one-on-one attention that they've indirectly or directly have asked for. I want to build up more talent. We've made 2 more hires this week. We got 2 more coming up. I really want to I want to spend more time building talent. Less of, I have to do a lot of public events.
You don't like the schmoozing?
At some point.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll just leave it there. At some point, it'd be nice to not have to do that every day.
Yeah, I hear you. Good stuff. For someone getting started in their real estate career, what's a piece of advice that you give them to propel their career and or set themselves up for long-term success?
If I had to do it again, I give everybody the same 2 pieces of advice. If I had to do it again, I would have kept my day job. I would have strung it as long as I could, keep that check in healthcare for as long as possible while building my business strategy. The beauty of real estate is you can have a 9-to-5. There's whole investment thesis around being a 9-to-5 millionaire.
Yeah.
Like that's a real thing.
Yeah.
So I tell folks all the time, like, before you jump out here and think you're going to be, the great developer of all time, just know that it might be 2 years before you make a buck. Are you ready to weather that storm? Is your family ready to weather that storm?
Dude, I think it's something that's gotten worse lately too with the social media, because like we were joking about it for a second, but it's serious. Like everybody promoting themselves so like without any like validation, I guess. Like you go on and every time you open up one of your whatever they call those feeds or whatever, it's like everybody's rich and everybody's popping, here's a 20 IRR on this deal, you do the Burr method, you buy, renovate, refi, whatever. It's, it's like, and I think that it creates this disillusion or whatever you want to call it of what it really takes to get started in real estate. And like different but similar in that like I left a good job in medical sales to be a broker where I made no money, and like it worked out, but skipped vacations, didn't go out with my friends. Like you take a big step back in what you're making, and it's a reality of starting in the business that I don't think people appreciate as much on an increasing basis. Like, I think it's getting more and more like kind of disconnected from what the actual like start in real estate is. And it's like in brokerage, you call it like commission breath. Like if people know that you have to make a check to make a living, then all of a sudden I'm representing you. Are my interests aligned? Am I doing it for you or am I doing it for me? You know, and I think people can lie to themselves and say, oh, I'm still doing what's about, you know, you're trying to support yourself and put food on the table. Like, it's impossible to always act in the long-term interest of your clients if you are in that desperate state. So I think people should talk to folks like you or folks like me, and just not to say no, don't go for it, but understand what's gonna entail to launch your own thing and go from having a really comfortable lifestyle to not.
That's it. And I would say the other piece of advice I really consistently give, and it sounds counterintuitive coming from me, start small. There's so much education from 0 to 1. You know, when I started with a six unit. It was a terrible decision. It's way too big to be on your own. Regardless of how many millions you think you've managed, go do a 1-2 flat, a single family 2 flat. You're going to learn a lot of lessons. You're going to get screwed over by a contractor. You might as well take a $50,000 loss than a $800,000 loss. And that's a lesson people don't ever talk about, is that if you start small, then you can build the momentum in the coalition of contractors, service providers. You have no idea. The amount of people involved in a development, between architects, lawyers, environmental folks, engineers, there's like every one of my deals has 13, 14 different people involved.
Well, and I think when people hear, you know, people see you, you know, young guy, and you look on your youngish, you look on your website.
Ouch.
And same age as me. Look on your website, and you know, you see the types of projects that you have in the pipeline right now. Massive, complex, neighborhood changing type developments, and then I think it'll be refreshing for people to hear you say start small. You know, make small mistakes at the beginning, and it's just not as sexy for people to do or talk about. Yeah. So they end up trying to talk themselves into doing something larger and you know, bigger deal, bigger mistakes.
Well, and I think what you also, as I alluded to this when we started, but you also have an invisible client at all times, which is the bank. So if you started with a 1 and then did a 2. Then a 4, then an 8. Now you've built a real track record.
Yeah, whether it's the bank or whether it's investors or whether it's just your own confidence. Like, yeah, I'm with you, dude. You know, I want to keep this as a very pro-Chicago. I'm very pro-Chicago. I know that you are. And we both are raising our families in the city. We both are growing our businesses in the city. We're both investing in the city. And I like to think that we're both doing it the right way and trying to build real relationships with people and be good stewards of the community as we do it. So tell me why you love Chicago as a place to live and work and invest.
Oh, man. I mean, we need another hour for this, but I think, I mean, I say this everywhere I go. I think Chicago's the best city in America. You know,
preach.
It checks all the boxes in terms of public transportation, affordability. You know, you've got the lake, which is like our secret. Like, it's just amazing. And then we've got the best food scene in the country. So like, we're food junkies. We go out to eat. I mean, we're out all the time for food. Like, it's our thing. So I mean, I still, and you know, not to crap on New Yorkers. I mean, New York's a good city, but it kind of reminds me of, if you ever seen those power washing movies, like power washing clips where they power wash something and you realize how clean it is underneath.
Oh, dude.
That is the difference between New York and Chicago.
You go to West Village and like garbage piled on the street.
Yeah.
Alleys. What's going on?
If you power wash New York, you could see Chicago. That's what you do.
I mean, in addition to those things, you have diversity. You know, but you have diversity with an undertone of like Midwestern values.
Yes.
You know, people that are connecting with each other, and they're not. You know, there's just this. it's got sharp elbows too, but I think that there's a warmness to it still. It's still
Absolutely.
like this beacon for, you're from Indiana, I'm from Iowa, like we aspired to live in Chicago.
It's still Mecca for the Midwest.
And
it still is.
Then diversity economically too.
Yes.
All these different industries that call Chicago home, it's important for them to have a presence here. So a few of the many reasons why I love the city too.
Love the shot.
Good stuff, dude. Thanks for doing it.
Of course, brother.
Thanks for bearing with me.
I couldn't tell you no. I'd have to see you tomorrow either way.
Yeah. Thanks again for being on, AJ.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.